Sorry to wake everyone up there. We're going to get underway. Tonight's our nature competition. And before we start, just a few announcements. Our clicker doesn't work, so I'm down here at the keyboard if you see me looking down there. Upcoming meetings. Friday nights, next Friday, January 27th, we'll have a Zoom presentation. The clubhouse will be open. Lewis Katz, The Myth of Style. His website is listed on our website under the calendar page. It's very, very interesting. He talks about style, how we determine style, different types of style. Again, I think it'll be a very interesting presentation. February 3rd, black and white competition, print competition. And I'm sorry, I haven't heard from anyone. I need a speaker to fill 30 minutes while the judges deliberate. Like I said, doesn't matter. Song and dance, speech, anything you want to do. If not, you're going to have to sit through my presentation on Mongolia, photographing Mongolia, a little bit there. So anyone who has a 30-minute presentation they want to give, they can get in touch with me at any time through info@clevelandphoto.org, and I will put them in. February 10th, bee competition, which will be a print competition. And February 17th will be our photojournalism night. Upcoming field trips, February 18th, which is not February 18th anymore, the Templar Motors Factory display is rescheduled due to illness on the part of the owner. We are going to get our field trips back up and running. There was a little lull in our schedule there. You'll start to see more in the announcements and on the calendar, but I'll be announcing them all ahead of time. Our next SIG meeting, February 2nd, with Dave Brooks. Everything you want to know about filters, when to use them, how to use them. Dave is a font of knowledge. We always have a lot of fun at those meetings, and of course then after the talk, we all break up into camera-specific groups. That's the first Thursday of every month, and that's coming up this February 2nd. Tomorrow is our cabin fever party. If you haven't RSVP'd, info@clevelandphoto.org, let us know. Tomorrow night, we have a lot of people coming, food, prizes, robbers auction, lots of fun. Again, we're starting up back again after COVID, so we're looking forward to really a good time. A Zoom presentation, not part of our club, but in cooperation with the Westbridge Camera Club of Columbus, John Paul Caponigro, who is an expert on digital prints, really how to make the importance of a good print and how to make good prints. So it's all about printing, and they have shared that Zoom link with us. So on our CPS website homepage, if you're interested, there's a link to the Zoom meeting then. CPS name tags, we're going to be doing a second printing in several weeks. The sign-up list is not in back of the room. I have it up here. So if you need a new name tag, just let me know and I'll write it down. We'll get you done in the second printing. And of course, all of our regular meetings are on our YouTube site. Just on the front page of our homepage, just click on the YouTube icon, and when you're there, go to the live section of the YouTube channel, and that'll be all of our meetings in date order, and you can see them. So, let me now switch over. We're going to start our presentation tonight, and first I'm going to talk about the judges. Our first judge tonight is George Kosar, and George is an artist and illustrator and a past adjunct faculty member of the Ashland University. A Bay Village resident, he has more than 50 solo shows. His work has also been exhibited in 400 group shows in the United States, most numerous the Butler mid-year shows in Youngstown and the Cleveland Museum of Art May Show. He has won numerous awards, including a Juror's Award at the Butler Institute of Art in 1985 and 1998, and Best of Show at the Ohio Exposition Center in Columbus in 1998. He's listed in Who's Who in American Art, and his illustrations have graced the pages of numerous newspapers and magazines, including the Cleveland Plain Dealer, Esquire, Playboy, GQ, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. That is a pretty eclectic mixture there. Peter Cox. Peter says, I picked up a camera 5 years ago as a distraction for one of life's difficult patches. There would be very few days since that I haven't taken a picture. And living in, and this caught my eye too, living in New Zealand, we have many landscape opportunities, and my starting intention was to travel around New Zealand and take landscape photos. Now that I am semi-retired and have made this dream a reality, however, I have added an obsession with bird photography into the mix. In fact, anything that makes a good picture is okay by me. I sell pictures when asked and have been featured in Frames magazine and has provided photo illustrations for a book recently written for older children on New Zealand birds. I have also been commissioned to create bird-oriented photo art for camper vans and billboards. I still consider myself an amateur photographer and love the creative flexibility this allows. I am self-taught. With modern cameras, I don't believe the technical side of photography is very difficult and have therefore spent a lot of time studying traditional art. There is a wealth of information in that area for photographers to learn from, and over time, integrated these learnings into my photography. How come he has a New York... That's a good question. I don't know. And Ron Gout discovered the outdoors at an early age and developed a deep passion for wilderness and photography. Not surprisingly, with Ron's 30-year engineering background and thirst to learn about the photographic processes, in the early 1990s, he began to experiment with many different films developers, silver papers, and alternative processes. He quantified much of his work by sensitometric analysis to determine the film developer and paper developer combination properties for different film and paper development methods, submitting the results as thesis papers at a local college. Influenced in his early work by Ansel Adams, John Sexton, Lynn Radeka, Ray McSavene, and other contemporary West Coast landscape masters, Ron traveled and photographed the Southwest with his 4x5 view cameras, particularly Death Valley. And he says, quote, Death Valley is probably the most dynamic and diverse national park in America. It's like a big, beautiful painting. You could sit and stare for hours picking out all the different pieces. Ron's style reflects his feelings about Death Valley. He enjoys photographing the intimate details of the landscape. And Ron uses Lightroom for global adjustments and Photoshop to fine-tune his images before printing. He has firmly established himself as an accomplished photographer and printer, receiving awards and accolades from critics and through photographic competitions. So those are our judges for tonight. So we get set now for our nature competition. Bill Keaton's got a little announcement.
Just real quick, there's 113 images tonight, so the participation was pretty good. I do want to go over Hand of Man. If there's anything that shows a man's presence in your photograph, you cannot enter it in nature. Normally, when I move things to Pictorial, I try to email people ahead of time and let them know. I was not able to do that this week. I've had a little bit of a hectic week. But if you have a flower and there's stems that have obviously been cut, that disqualifies it from nature. A boat in your scene doesn't cut it. That's Hand of Man. Be careful of your backgrounds. There was one photo tonight that had two cars in the background and a fence. It wasn't real obvious, but when you looked at it closely, you could see those things. So be careful in your nature pictures of Hand of Man. And with that, one other thing, volunteers. Volunteers is the lifeblood of any club. There's a couple sheets in the back. I'm trying to update our volunteer list, people that will handle prints on print nights, people who are willing to work the sign-in table. I'd like to find a couple more people to teach how to use the copy camera. We've got 3 or 4 people, and I don't like to have to call on the same 2 or 3, 4 people for every competition, so I'm trying to get a little bit more diversity of that. So volunteer sign-in sheets on the back. If you'd like to contribute a little bit, please sign up. And with that, I think we'll get started.
Okay, let me get our images up.
Peter says, "You were the first photo that came up, and in hindsight, I might have bumped you up 1 point. The light is lovely and warm, and the composition well weighted to fit the strong feeling of harmony that the photo evokes. The bird seems to be in focus as far as I can tell with this size image, and the background is slightly softer, creating depth, but still enough detail to create the peaceful mood of an entire scene. My only comment regarding how I might improve is, although it is a really good photo and evokes emotion, to get a top score, I want a photo to leap off the page at me and demand that I keep looking at it."
This is All Alone by Mike Murray, 21 points. We have a reader for this. Oh, we need a mic.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Ron says, "Such a powerful display of an animal who is proudly displaying his rack. He appears to be looking into the camera or the photographer and breathing heavily as you can see his breath. It must have been cold. I like that the image was made with a long lens, probably to avoid disturbing the animal. The long lens accounts for the compressed foreground and background, which absolutely works for this image. The out-of-focus background reduces background distractions, bringing the interest to the foreground. I like the crop, but I would be interested in seeing left side crop just for comparison purposes. Nicely developed and executed image."
Gary Wood, Alpha, 21 points.
George says, "Nice macro shot of the ants. Interesting textures in the background and bottom. Leaves you guessing why the last ant isn't carrying anything."
Mike Kopkis, Ants on the Move, 20 points.
"A good photo," Peter says. "The white of the water has not been overexposed. I can see detail in the shadows. The composition seems balanced to me, which is important if you want to portray nature's serenity. I have 2 suggestions to consider. My eye is not quite sure where the main area of attention should be, and so it is wandering around the scene. The far side of the waterfall is probably the main focal point, but I would like it to be a bit more of a statement. I personally would have cropped more of the right side and the bottom out to give the far side of the waterfall more weight, importance, and so it was less in the center and larger. Second, to me, the image is a little flat in that there is no feeling of depth that draws me into the picture."
Ron Werman, Awe Train Falls, 19 points.
Ron's comment, "Mr. Owl sitting in a tree. Interesting image, well done. The owl looks very sharp, and the tree trunk and branches nicely frame him. Out of focus background reduces distractions and brings attention to the owl. Very good. I wish the tree trunk was in focus. Background highlights are a bit distracting. It's our nature to be attracted to the shiny and bright objects. There are tools in Photoshop that can be used to reduce distracting highlights. Otherwise, very nice image.
Susan Bestel, barred owl, 22 points.
Good negative positive relationship with foreground and background. There is nothing wrong with the image of the bird and branch, which is in perfect focus, but I don't see anything compelling in this image.
Joseph Miko, black-capped chickadee, 22 points.
Peter says, this is a good photo. The strong color against the background certainly makes the subject stand out, and you have managed to get everything in focus. In terms of additional things to consider to take it up a level, let's forget about the technical photography side for a minute and think of it like an artist would if they were painting this from a blank canvas. Artists often divide a painting into areas of interest that command attention and areas of rest that are very easy on the eye. The number of areas of interest are usually an odd number, like 1, 3, and 5. For some reason, the brain likes it better that way. This picture has two very strong areas of interest, the insect and the flower, so they are effectively competing with each other. Each one stops me setting on the other for any length of time, like trying to read a book with loud music on. So in this picture, you can't do much about having an even number of main objects, but why not reduce the impact of one of them? You could do this with your lighting, composition, or even in post-processing. If you reduce the clarity, contrast, saturation, sharpness, etc. of one of the objects, you reduce its importance. The other will take center stage and the image will become easier to enjoy. You can even take this concept further and apply it to a single object. For example, reduce the visual weight of the base of the flower near the edge and move it towards the tip. Or in the case of the insect, reduce the visual weight of the tail so it moves more towards the head.
Dave Saborik, blue dasher on water lily bud, 23 points, honorable mention.
Ron's comment. At first glance, it's a nice image. A waterfall, rocks, bushes. Colors are pleasing, well executed, but lacks a central interest. My eye wanders looking for a main element of interest. Assuming that the photographer intended to make the waterfall the main interest, I would try cropping out the top third of the image. This might help.
Leslie Nutt, Brandywine, 21 points.
Beautiful soft, George says, beautiful soft focus image of this plant. Wonderful color between the violet and the greens. Interesting parts of the plant peeking through.
Marge Brady, Kayla Lilly, 23 points, honorable mention.
This is a lovely photo also, Peter says. Both flowers in focus. The green background soft and complements the purple magenta flowers. I hope these plants' comments are being read in order as following from the last photo about odd numbers of compositional elements. You have actually done that here. There are the two flowers and also the yellow area of the background near the base of the photo, forming three stronger elements. My only thought is that both the flowers are quite equal in weight, and I wonder what would happen if you brought out the closest one and muted the other.
Donna Schneider, Calypso Orchids, Jasper National Park, 21 points.
Ron says, I like the near-far concept in this image. My eyes directed from the foreground elements, ground and trees, and then through the opening between the trees to the field, and then to the snow-dusted hills in the distance. Very nice. However, I'm not attracted to the trees. They appear a bit out of focus and not particularly aesthetic. The balance of the image is heavy in the top right corner area. Try flipping the image over and then decide whether it looks out of balance. I would love to see more of the field and snow-dusted hills. They are quite beautiful.
Mike Lonsdale, Castle Rock State Park, Idaho, 21 points.
George's comment, solid shot of an area in the country I just love. Good focus, solid composition. That said, outside of what it is, I don't find it all that interesting. Like the birds on the branch, okay. Canyon, okay.
Gary Marich, Coke Ovens, Colorado National Monument, 20 points.
Peter says the blue-green in the background complements its beautiful tiger's coloring. There are a few things I can see that might add to this image. One, there are a few areas where the whites have blown into pure white, so the hair detail of fur has been lost, particularly around the bottom left, but also a little above the eye and on the chin. Two, apart from losing fur detail, the strong white around the neck, bottom left, is pulling attention away from the face and eyes, which are nearly always the most important part of an animal portrait. Put your hand over the white around the neck and you can immediately see the face commanding more presence. Three, I would like to have seen the eyes a little more clearly. Four, the tiger's body has also taken some of the presence of the face away. The viewer will feel more involved with the photo if you were to have a little more space in front of the eyes in the direction it is looking. I know it is hard because you can't direct the animal, but if you try long enough, you will get a better pose where everything comes together. Sometimes I will lay hidden taking pictures of the same bird or animal for hours on end with 1,000 photos. Only one or two will make the cut.
Bryant Mohammed, Cool Cat, 21 points.
Ron's comment, nice image. Beautiful morning or late afternoon light. The coyote's eye contact with the camera, photographer, is very powerful. It's all in the eyes. It is human nature to be drawn to the eyes. Also, being at the same eye level as your subject makes more of a connection and a more intimate photo. Well done. My only criticism is the distracting rock in the background. Otherwise, very nice image.
Richard Schneider, Coyote at the Mud Pots, 24 points, third place.
George says, I like the contrast between the sharp focus bird and the soft focus background. Nice colorization in the bird's feathers and the pinkish breast and tail. Nice texture on the broken tree. I found this bird a little more interesting.
Marge Brady, Dark-Eyed Junco, 24 points, third place.
I love the feel of this photo, Peter says. The simple color palette is quite beautiful and the picture has a real sense of depth. The muted green in the foreground complements the sand but doesn't stop my eye wandering into the dunes and across to the horizon. The only constructive criticism from me is that my eye wants that horizon to be horizontal. Perhaps also try removing those footprints and see if anything is gained.
Richard Ader, Desert at Twilight, 21 points.
The detail in this image is fabulous. The use of the long lens to frame the chimp and blur the background is excellent. His eyes sparkle. Everything about this image is remarkable.
Joe Smith, Elder Statesman, 23 points, honorable mention.
George says, the contrast between the barren background and the wolf and twigs in the foreground tell a story, which is more than a bird on a branch. It's about survival, and this photo tells that story well. Still debating if the wolf is too low, compositionally speaking. Think about it.
James McDonald, Eyeing the Scene, 23 points, honorable mention.
Peter says, I like the overall composition, the color palette, and the concept. I am not sure whether it is too much clarity or perhaps HDR used. However, it has been done. I feel that it works in the foreground but is much too strong in the background, and as a result it looks too uniform and flat for my eye. Most images benefit by creating depth and have some easier rest areas. If this was my image, I would bring out the clarity, sharpness of the rapids in the foreground, but fade that out going back into the picture.
Bob Kowaleski, Forces of Nature, 21 points.
I like this image. The frog resting in the sunlight flower petal is what makes this image unique. Of course, the flower and its complementary colors are stunning, but it's the frog that makes the image different. Well done.
Dave Saborik, Frog on Water Lily, 24 points, third place.
George says, the jagged broken branches darting from both sides of the picture plane make this a compelling image. Brings an element of danger to a scene of a bird serenely standing in the water.
Dale Cohen, Goose in Repose, 19 points.
Peter says there are lots of interesting compositional elements here that all sit well together. The white in the water at the front is slightly blown out in a few places, something that is so easy to do with long exposures on water. So how could it be improved? The main thing I feel here is that the strong white of the water in the lower right is carrying too much compositional weight so that my eye is alternating between the waterfall top left and the water bottom right, which are opposite ends of the picture. So one possible thing to consider is reducing the weight of the river bottom right by cropping a few inches from the right and the bottom up just a little. Then, in post-processing, you could darken the foreground and lower right river just enough to support the main waterfall rather than compete with it.
Dave Korosek, Great Falls of Tinker's Creek, 22 points.
Ron's comment. I like the narrative of this image. The beautiful bird appears to be gathering material for nest building. It must be spring. Is this a male or female? These are all questions that create the narrative that makes this an interesting image. I also like the diagonals that create dynamism and tension. I think this image could have been better if the background was a different color than green.
Dave Korosek, excuse me, gentlemen. Joe DiStefano, having some weed, 21 points.
George's comment. It's an interesting image, nice composition and colorization. I like the textural contrast between the orange middle part of the plant and the smooth flower.
Vicky Wirt, Holly Hill Gloria, 21 points.
I like the way, I like your composition. The photo is divided in blue sky, or blue sea and sky, green wave, and the brown-red rock, with the waves adding interest, Peter says. In terms of improvement, I do wonder if you have done your composition a disservice by shooting in quite harsh overhead light, and whether the sun being lower in the sky would have added a lot more drama and excitement.
Mike Kopkis, Hydropower, 22 points.
Ron's comment, fantastic image. Eagle is sharp, perfectly exposed. Background slightly blurred so that the attention is directed on the eagle. Its eyes are directed forward in the direction of the camera, which makes this image even more powerful. The fact that the eagle and camera are at the same level makes more of a connection and a more intimate photo. You
Bob.
show their perspective on the world. My only criticism, I wish the background wasn't split in two parts across the eagle.
Bob Kowaleski, Intensity, 25 points, second place.
Solid composition. I must say, this year's batch of photos was solid compositionally. That said, this is a nice vacation photo. It is nicely shot, good focus, but I don't find it at all that interesting.
Gary Marich, J. Rob Campground, Fruita, Colorado, 21 points.
I like this, Peter says. There's something interesting about the way you have composed it. I see three compositional elements in a pleasing triangle. The flower being the main area of interest, the flower bud above it adds interest and breaks that everyday photo feel, and the third area of interest is the leaf tip. My thoughts on how you can improve it are only suggestions for you to play around with, then decide for yourself whether they add anything. You could try something a tiny bit more space above the top bud and crop the left side with a very small amount.
Ron Werman, Japanese Anemone and Leaf, 20 points.
Ron says, the majestic lion. Lovely image. Dark and uncluttered background brings all the attention to the lion. Excellent. Slightly blurred foreground also helps put the attention right on the lion. Just a fabulous and well-executed image. One of my favorites.
Fran Marino, Just Relaxing, 22 points.
George says, another bird on a branch. I like the colorization, also like the way you have the white highlights that make the image all that more interesting. Compositionally solid.
Joe Smith, Looking Back, 22 points.
Peter says, the monkey's pose and eye contact is engaging. I would like to have seen a higher quality image as it is a struggle to see the details of the monkey clearly. Part of the issue is that the monkey's fur is mostly black and is surrounded by bright areas, which immediately makes the black fur and face even harder to see. Further compounding the problem is that the sun looks very high in the sky and is creating strong contrast. I prefer to shoot wildlife with a very low sun, or even better, on a cloudy, overcast day. One approach with a very dark subject against a bright background like this is to deliberately blow out the background into white and just worry about getting that animal itself looking good. However, the monkey also has some bright white areas on its fur. This is certainly a difficult subject. Perhaps just getting in closer to the face with a zoom lens or a closer position, then lifting the shadows and post-processing would be the only real option to getting a much clearer picture.
Bryant Muhammad, Monkey Business, 19 points.
Ron's comment, I like the concept. Dark foreground, hazy and bright background creates the illusion of distance and depth. Very moody. On my screen, it appears a bit out of focus. Maybe that was intentional. I prefer that at least the foreground be in focus.
Eric Worthington, off the coast of Norway, 22 points.
George says, this photo has dynamic asymmetrical composition. Wonderful focus on the birds. Also, very interesting nest. I imagine this photographer staking out the nest, waiting hours to get a shot like this. Great job.
Gary Bloom, Papa Heron Returns Home, 25 points, second place.
Peter says, such a cute little bird. Why are people picking these black and white subjects? But you have done well getting detail in the blacks and the whites not blown out. Area to think about for improvements are, the very light background makes the dark face harder to see. This would have been better against a darker background. When I photograph birds or animals, the first thing I think about is how can I get the best background for the subject. He also says you could bring out the face a little more in post-processing with a curves adjustment. Keep it natural though. Also, I feel like it is a little over sharpened. I find the best approach is to sharpen the key areas only, but not the background and perhaps not all of the bird.
Eric Wethington, Penguin, 19 points.
Ron's comment. Interesting juxtaposition of the two animals is my first impression with this image. Very sharp and in focus. Background is uncluttered and out of focus, which brings the viewer's attention right to the animals. Wonderful light illuminating both animals. There's a slight blue cast, probably from the sky, that illuminates the animal on the left. I like that. Very nice image, well done.
Gary Wood, Perfect Couple, 23 points, honorable mention.
George says, again, solid asymmetrical composition. Not as dynamic as the other photo with the two birds. I wonder if the image would have been better if it was cropped to show the bird larger and make him more the focus. Right now, it seems the tree is more important than the bird.
Chuck Fitzgerald, posing for his portrait, 21 points.
Peter says, this is a very pleasing photo to look at, and I like the backlight and starbursts from the sun. If it was my photo, I think I would be tempted to crop the darker undergrowth at the bottom completely out, as I love simplifying images. But it is not essential, just a different take.
Debbie Liuski, Quaking Aspens, 23 points, honorable mention.
Ron's comment. The first thing I noticed was the catch light in the bird's eye. Love that. Creates intimacy. The bird's feathers glow in the sunlight. Beautiful. The background is colorful, but uncluttered and out of focus, which directs the viewer's attention to the bird that is crisply in focus. The diagonal of the bird's perch creates tension. The darker area in the bottom right balances out the dark mass of the bird that occupies the upper left side of the image. This image is beautifully balanced. Fine work.
Maria Diaconu, Red-winged Blackbird, 21 points.
George says, I find this a very compelling image, beautiful in its simplicity, almost Zen-like. One element dominating another, yet that element survives. Wonderful.
Vicky Wirt, Sticks in Sand, 23 points, honorable mention.
Peter says, I love the slow shutter speed on the birds. It captures all that activity perfectly, and I can feel myself right there. Well done. The only thing I might consider playing around with is the dark clump of solid ground and grass in the foreground is carrying a bit of visual weight. What would happen if you just softened that in post-processing slightly by reducing the clarity, reducing contrast, and even adding haze in that area and into the midground?
Bill Keaton, Sunset at the Bosque, 26 points, first place.
Ron says, I like this composition. The smooth water from a long exposure contrasts the rugged-looking rocks. My eyes are directed first to the rocks in the foreground, then up the creek, and then to the beautifully captured sunset or sunrise. I would recommend reprocessing this image with less clarity or texture, assuming Lightroom was used. I think it looks a bit too harsh. Reprocessing the image with less contrast will make it look more realistic and add a sense of calm to this beautiful scene.
Bob Kowaleski, Swift Current River, 21 points.
George says, I like the sharp focus of the white, brown, and gray birds contrasted with the soft focus black and white backdrop. Added to that, the dynamic of taking off.
Bill Keaton, The Swan's Departure, 22 points.
Peter says, this is a fascinating moment in time and certainly made me look and wonder what is happening. I really like the way the faces and eyes all meet in a circle in the middle. I think you could add even more power and interest to this photo in a couple of areas. One, the grass in the background at the top seems to contain a slightly distracting pattern. Perhaps it is sharpening artifacts. I'm not sure. Two, play down the visual weight of the light grass at the bottom. So if I was editing this, I would do that by adding clarity and sharpening across the faces in the middle, reducing it around the edges, and lowering the highlights and midtones in the bright areas at the bottom.
Glenn Petranik, the Wolfpack, 24 points, third place.
Ron says, great light. I like that the shutter speed was slow enough to allow a little bit of blur in the bird's wings, therefore creating a sense of action. Nicely exposed, processed, and composed. Unfortunately, the foreground is messy looking. It doesn't help the image. It distracts from the bird, which is the main interest. Nobody's fault other than the bird for landing there.
Joseph Kalecki, a wood duck, 23 points, honorable mention.
George says, wins the prize for cutest image. I like that the eyes are in sharp focus while everything else is blurred to certain degrees. Stunningly set against the black backdrop, it is a compelling image.
Fran Marino, Babyface, 23 points, honorable mention.
What a beautiful animal, Peter says. I love how the eyes are looking straight at the camera. It is a well-taken photo that certainly has an impact on the viewer. There isn't much I would consider changing, just a little in the post-processing. By the way, my change suggestions on any of these photos are only thoughts. It is totally up to you to decide whether to try them and whether they add anything to the photo. In the photo editing, I would try adding a little more clarity and contrast to the face, not much, so that it's not too obvious. I would also try and dull that background just a little, again, not too far, so that it detracts from the photo.
Debbie Lieski, Botswana Leopard, 24 points, third place.
Ron's comment, great close-up, great composition. Assuming that this is a fox, he's making eye contact, which makes a connection and more intimate photo. And shooting at eye level makes the image powerful. Well done.
James McDonald, Handsome Boy, 22 points.
George says, another dynamic bird photo, solid composition, wonderful sharp focus on the birds, great interaction of the main characters, very nice.
Tish Hopkins, hey, that's my spot, 23 points, honorable mention.
Peter says, I'm really envious of people that have hummingbirds to photograph. You have done a good job here, catch light in the eyes, face, and eyes sharp. The background lets the bird take center stage. One thing to consider is whether or not that big bright white under the belly is pulling attention away from the face and eyes. You could try a curves adjustment to bring down the whites and midtones just a little, leave the face area, just brush it in the bottom right-hand side.
Gary Bloom, Hummer on the Wing, 22 points.
Ron's comment, this is a very peaceful photo. Nice colors. The stream is framed so that it creates a diagonal, which also creates a sense of tension. I have two recommendations. First, and this is a minor one, the bright sky that can be seen through the tree's branches is distracting. I would try to reduce the luminosity of the sky or clone it out of the most distracting areas. Cloning in darker mode is a very useful tool for hiding bright spots. There are tutorials on YouTube and Google for this extremely useful Photoshop technique. My other recommendation is to try reprocessing the photo, but with less clarity or texture. Softening the photo will create an even greater sense of calm and serenity.
David Korosek, Kejimkujik Creek, Nova Scotia, 23 points, honorable mention.
George says, very nice composition. Wonderful balance between the soft focus background and the sharp focus foreground. Beautifully simple. Again, almost Zen-like.
Valdez Krebs, Midwinter Cleveland Metro Park, 24 points, third place.
Peter says you have captured a good pose here, and the bird's coloring is amazing. There are a few things I think could improve this image. 1, watch for those unnatural straight lines created in the background. Not sure what has caused them, but my eye was distracted by them straight away. Perhaps they were caused by a background extension, but they need to be carefully cloned out. 2, that pink reflection at the bottom is so close to the edge of the photo that to me it is taking too much attention away from the face. And 3, the all-important face area looks overexposed to my eye and has lost some of its detail.
Elda Borani, Rosette Spoonbill Ballerina, 21 points.
Ron says, who doesn't love a tortoise? Well done photo. Narrow depth of field, but his face is sharp as it should be. Overall, nice photo of one's pet.
Susan Bestel, Sulcata Tortoise, 20 points.
George's comment, wonderful colorization. That contrast between the orange and blue ice crystals is stunningly beautiful. Very dynamic composition.
Chuck Fitzgerald, Sunset on an Icy Day, 22 points.
Peter says the compositional balance is good. I see the rock arch as the most important area of interest and like the way the strata in the rocks on the left side foreground seem to point to the arch. Exposure is good and the sharpness and detail is there too. A couple of things to think about are, 1, that light is very harsh and I wonder if you've picked the best condition to take your photograph in. And 2, the rock wall in the midground behind the arch is stopping the full size and shape of the arch being appreciated. If it is not possible to pick a better vantage point, then you should do some judicious editing to bring out the arch and differentiate the 2 legs from the background.
Ria Diaconu, The Arch, 21 points.
Ron's comment, beautiful. The pair of ducks are perfectly positioned in the frame. The background is blurred and uncluttered, and that puts the main interest to the ducks. The diagonal log that the pair are perched on creates additional interest. Because of the simple and uncluttered background, the soft and perfectly developed colors, and they are a very handsome pair of ducks. I could look at this image for minutes at a time. Nice work.
Joseph Miko, Two Little Ducky Resting, 21 points.
George says, composition is solid. This has a softer feel to it than some of the other bird shots. Makes it more interesting to me. Has a tranquil feel to it.
Richard Schneider, a late day visitor, 19 points.
Okay, and that concludes our nature portion. I think, why don't we take a 5-minute break, and then we'll start with our pictorial.
Congratulations, Bill. Latest.
Dave that and Mike that so they are shooting. You're still only reading George's comment. So when he's, George's, so I'm reading the first one. Ron's reading the next one. You'll know, he'll say sibling rivalry. You'll know it's a George comment.
Okay, we'll get ready to get underway with the pictorial portion. Give everyone a chance to get back in their seats. Okay. And now we'll begin with our pictorial portion of the competition, right?
1 second.
In 1 second. Please stand by. Even though your image at home is a black screen, we are still here, and we're just getting everything set. Okay, and we'll get underway here. This is the pictorial section we'll do now. This is image number 1. So these are no comments, so. We want to read the results on the image.
Yes. Richard Snyder, a late day visitor, 21 points.
Okay. Now this next image, backyard Lily, will have a comment.
Peter says, this is a good photo to my eyes. There's a gentle beauty to it. I like the soft light on the petals and how the background supports it rather than competes with it. The highlight on the adds a little point of interest and also without competing with the main flower. Nothing really stands out to me as to how to improve it.
Valdez Krebs, backyard lily, 23 points, 3rd place. Terry Martin, barn owl portrait, 25 points, 1st place. Leslie Nutt, Beautiful Lake, Michigan, 21 points. Rick Mills, Bedford Falls Water Jets, 19 points. Rick Mills, Bedford Over the Falls, 20 points. Joseph Miko, Bridge over Cuyahoga River, 24 points, 2nd place. Dale Cohen, Seski Krumlov, Czech Republic, 22 points.
The next picture, Cue the Sun, will have a comment.
Guess that's my turn. Ron's comment. Wow, great timing. This must have taken a great deal of patience to wait for just the opportune time to snap the shutter. I like that the horizon occupies the lower 1/4 of the photo, and that the gull is literally occupies the remaining part of the frame. Great colors, too. Nice work.
Mike Murray, Cue the Sun, 21 points. Jackie Sajeski, Desert Beauty, 23 points, 3rd place. James McDonald, Fulcro Romero, 18 points. Fran Marino, Fun in the Sun, 20 points. Terry Martin, Highway of Fire, 23 points, third place. Donna Schneider, Lake Louise Sunrise, 23 points, third place. Dale Hennessy, Lots of Sail Lines, 23 points, third place. Dave Korosek, Mahoney Bay, Nova Scotia, 23 points, third place. Ria Diaconu, Orchid and Tree, 21 points. Jackie Sajeski, Portrait, 24 points, second place. Tish Hopkins, Rainbow Reflection, 22 points.
In the next picture, sibling rivalry will have a comment.
George says, "This photographer captures birds in action magnificently. This photo has ghost-like images of the wings and other body parts that I find distracting. I don't think they are necessary."
Tish Hopkins, Sibling Rivalry, 22 points. Susan Beskel, Siblings Stick Together, 21 points. Chuck Fitzgerald, St. Stan's, 21 points. Debbie Lieski, Sunset Road, 23 points, third place.
In the next picture, the magic of nature will have a comment.
Well, that certainly looks like a very serene place to sit and contemplate life, Peter says. I like the composition, how it naturally leads from the foreground lake edge around to the two chairs and then across the lake to the trees on the far side. By the way, the photos in the comments section that I am looking at make it hard to look at it technically, but I'm wondering if it was a little uniformly over sharpened. I also feel like the light that you took the photo in is quite harsh, so the highlights are just a little strong in places.
Elda Baroni, The Magic of Nature, 21 points. Dan Hennessy, Trapini Sicily, 21 points. Susan Mahoric, Two Men on Curb 2, 21 points. Susan Mahoric, Two Men Sitting on the Curb, 22 points. Joe DiStefano, Upside Down Look.
Wait, on this one before, I'm sorry. Upside down look, there'll be a comment on.
Ron made the comment here. Interesting and funny photo. What makes a photo stand out from your typical pet cat photo is the upside cat. Great composition. Technically speaking, I wish the photo was sharp, and there seems to be some artifacts that are distracting.
Joe DiStefano, Upside Down Look, 19 points. Glenn Petranik, Waves and Gulls, 24 points, second place. Elda Baroni, We Have Arrived, 22 points. Mike Lonsdale, Yellowstone Solitude, 22 points. Richard Ader, young fighter pilot, 22 points. Bill Keaton, A Tinge of Color, 23 points, third place.
From this point on, the rest of the photos, I believe, are commented on. Are comments, starting with this one.
George says, wonderful colorization, solid composition, very compelling image. It shows the beauty of nature, and what more could you ask from a photo? Great shot.
Again, Bill Keaton, A Tinge of Color, 23 points, third place.
Peter says, I love the colors in this photo. The soft light reflections add to the overall feel also. In terms of improvement, you could try a curves adjustment to bring out more detail in the foreground, particularly the midtones, and then slightly decrease clarity on the horizon. It creates depth and makes the viewer feel more present in the picture.
Dave Saborik, Beaver Marsh Sunrise, 21 points.
Ron's comment. The blue of the laminar flow is fantastic. Parallel lines of water flowing from left to right in a diagonal make the image very interesting and dynamic. I'm particularly attracted to the curved shape of the water flow in the center of the image. Very cool. And the background with the fall foliage is beautiful. This is a location I would love to explore. Vertical walls, waterfalls, deciduous trees, and bushes. A stream that appears to flow in different directions. Wow. I really like this image. Nice work.
Rick Mills, Bedford Falls Rapids, 21 points.
George's comment, compositionally solid. I like the color contrast between sky and the trees. Just don't find it at all that interesting. There is nothing wrong with photos like this. Maybe it's just me.
Gary Wood, Blue Ridge from Okanolfiti, 21 points.
Peter says, that is a beautiful scene and the composition is well balanced. The floating jetty leads nicely to the mountains at the back. It is difficult to see exactly what is going on with this size image I am looking at, but it looks like it is over sharpened to me. The ice water in the lake is a rest area in this image, so don't apply any sharpening. Similarly, the mountains and trees at the back could be sharpened less to create depth. Similarly, with clarity, pick where it is applied rather than evenly across the image.
Richard Snyder, Boathouse at Malign Lake, 22 points.
Ron's comment. Beautiful photograph. The vertical parallel lines of the trees reflecting into the water makes this image feel dynamic, but peaceful. Visual irony. My only criticism, and this is something that likely can't be helped at this location, is the bottom of the image. I would like to see more of the shoreline. There's not enough showing or crop the rocks out entirely.
Dale Cohen, Chippewa Creek Reflection, 22 points.
George says, compositionally nice. A beautiful shot of a wonderful stained glass window. But other than that, what is the point? There is no story. It's a great brochure shot.
Ron Werman, County Courthouse Staircase, 23 points, third place.
Peter says, I like how you have simplified this image down to just a few components, with the oval ornate carving near the middle being the most important component. Something to consider is that there is a lot of pattern and texture, and a lot of viewers will find this too busy. So you could keep the overall concept, but perhaps tone it down by actually reducing clarity and contrast in some areas of the photo and see what the effect is. Remember to step away from it, though, because your brain becomes very adjusted to the image and you stop seeing it how other people see it. The first reaction when you haven't seen it for a while is the most important.
Joe DiStefano, Courthouse Stairs, 23 points, third place.
Ron's comment. I like the blue color cast of the alligator from the reflection of the sky and the green color of the water, presumably from the reflection of the shoreline vegetation. The eyes are looking forward toward the camera, more likely the human, which provides a sense of connection. When you get eye level with an animal, as in this case, you are in their world. This makes the image powerful, and the alligator too, and serves to create the deepest connections between the viewer and the subject. Great image.
Joe Smith, eye level, 21 points.
George says, I like how you balance the darks on both ends of the picture. In between that is a really nice shot of a valley and looming daybreak.
Mike Murray, How Morning Stretches, 23 points, third place.
Peter says it is a well-balanced composition. The foreground rocks lead in nicely, and the tall trees on the upper right side balance those rocks. It is very low-key, which I don't mind, but I wonder if it could be a little tighter and whether it would benefit from seeing a bit more detail in the band of dark green trees. Perhaps this is a case for some exposure blending, as I can see the sky above the mountains could blow out with a longer exposure.
Terry Martin, Jasper Sunrise, 22 points.
Ron's comment. Beautiful photograph. I love the soft blue colors and the complementary colors of the leaves. We have diagonals from the tree branches which create tension and interest. The bird profile with his one eye looking in the direction of the camera creates a sense of intimacy and interest. The sky is slightly out of focus, as are the tree with the leaves, which brings all the interest to the foreground with the bird. The plumage is gorgeous. Overall, just a fabulous photograph. Well done.
Leslie Nutt, Looking for Breakfast, 23 points, third place.
George says, the color of the waterfall is almost supernatural. The sharp focus of the rest of this scene contrasted against these falls is very compelling.
Donna Schneider, Mirror Lake, Alberta, Canada, 23 points, third place.
This made me smile, Peter says. Thank you. The expression, the shades, and the bright peace and love sweater all portray a little girl with lots of character. If it was my photo, I wouldn't want the chain across the front or that white railing and fence. For others, they may see it as all part of the story. I would also slightly lighten the face area and slightly darken the edges just to add power to the picture.
Richard Ader, oh my gosh, 25 points, first place.
Ron says, wonderful photograph. up close and personal. Blurred and neutral background brings all the attention to the front with the hawk perfectly exposed. The shot is eye level, which creates a sense of intimacy and power. Perfectly executed image. Very well done.
Vicky Wirt, Red-tailed Hawk, 23 points, third place.
George says, compositionally solid harbor scene. I don't find it all that interesting, but as photos go, there is nothing wrong with it. There is something on the left that I can't make out what it is. Wood outcrop? I would have cropped that out.
Eric Withington, Reflections in Norway, 21 points.
Peter says this is quite a challenging subject in my mind. The big rock is the main object, and the shape probably lends itself to a panorama-style shot. It is a challenging because you have no foreground to work with to help create a lead-in and depth, and the composition options are limited. What works really well is the shadows and shapes in the rock face, and the orange earthy color is complemented with the green in the midground. A couple of things I am not so sure about is the big empty orange cliff at the bottom edge pulls attention from the rock. Similarly, the bluish mountains at the at the back also compete with the rocks, and especially the ridge just above the line of trees on top of the outcrop. I don't have definitive answers as to how to take the subject up a level. But if the atmospheric haze was not too much, I think I would have tried a long lens to try and soften the background and the foreground, and then stitch multiple shots into a highly detailed long and narrow panorama. I can see the sun was casting decent shadows, but the light is still quite harsh and challenging.
Gary Marich, Saddlehorn, Colorado National Monument, 21 points.
Ron says, lovely photo of a square-rigged ship. I actually like the slight blue cast of the shadow of the ship. The sails are backlit. That's fantastic. The angle at which the ship was photographed creates a diagonal from bow to stern. This creates a sense of power and dynamic. I wish the ship was moving faster, though, to create a wake. That would have increased the sense of movement. Well done.
Dan Hennessy, Sea Cloud 2 and Tyrrhenian Sea, 21 points.
George says, very dynamic steel mill scene. Wonderful colors, smoke rising, swirling around, flames bursting. Very compelling.
Glenn Petranek, Steel Star and Flame, 24 points, second place.
Peter says, this works really well to me. A very attention-grabbing image and well executed. Only thought I have is to whether it would look better with separation of the falling hair from the arm. Perhaps you considered that, but either it was an impossible pose for the girl or it didn't look as good as what you have produced here. This is well done.
Jackie Sajeski, Stretch on Point, 24 points, second place.
Ron's comment. This photograph has it all. A beautiful sunset or sunrise, a waterfall, a stream that flows to the inlet or the ocean, and the sharp peaked hill or mountain. Was the water really that color? Interesting. It is certainly beautiful. Lovely photograph.
Bob Kowaleski, Sunrise at 2:57 a.m., 23 points, third place.
George's comment. Nice, sharp focus action shot. Composition is good. I might have dodged out the fence and especially the wheels in the background.
Marge Brady, trotting on air, 22 points.
Peter says there is a lot here that works well in an abstract, almost painterly kind of way. The repeating pattern, the blue against the orange, the white column fifth in breaks the blue at the start and adds interest. Once again, it is difficult to see from the image size I am looking at, but there seems to be some areas of sharpening or artifacts. Also, there is some sort of blur effect applied that creates a color type of look, and my eye is struggling to find something more detailed amongst that to latch onto. Perhaps add just one area where the effect is lessened but still ties in overall. In the past, people have negatively jumped all over processing effects, and a lot of creativity and possibility is extinguished before that person has a chance to find a method or style that is truly their own. With time and artistic talent, the results can be unique and breathtaking.
Mike Kopkus, Under the Bridge, 21 points.
Ron's comment. This is a fascinating photograph. What a narrative. What a story. Bad girl? Cops? Graffiti? Probably not the safest neighborhood. Full of color. Is she a model posing for the photographer? Or just someone the photographer met on the street who agreed to pose? So many questions. Technically, a great photo. Colors are saturated, but work. You got to wonder what's around the corner of that building. What are the cops doing there? I like this image very much. Well done.
Susan Mohoric, Winwood, 23 points, third place.
And that concludes our pictorial images for tonight. So that concludes our competition. We thank you all for who entered there as well. We thank you all for coming out, and we'll see you next time.